Okay, so let's do the allowance method versus the direct method for bad debts. It'll make a lot more sense after we look at it here. I hope. So the direct write-off is looking at individual accounts as they come due. So this one says on May 10th, $4,200 account receivable from D.R. Ross was determined to be uncollectible. So what do? We put it into bad debts expense and we took it out of accounts receivable. On the 21st, it was collected like 9 months later. So then I have to go and put it back in. And that's a real pain because I've got to keep track of this. So I have to put it into accounts receivable, take it out of the bad debts expense, and then do the cash and take it out of accounts receivable because I collected it. That's just kind of very complex. So if you do it the allowance method, it's a lot smoother. You're not dealing with direct accounts here. You're dealing with a pool of accounts. So they decided on December 31st that $30,000 worth of the $200,000 balance in their accounts receivable will eventually be uncollectible. So we're looking at this group of accounts receivable, and $300,000 of that will eventually be uncollectible. There's no specific account tied to that. It's just all of accounts payable. We don't know which ones. So we write this up. We've got a bad debts expense of $30,000. First of the year, we're done with that, and that goes into our allowance. That means that our accounts receivable is worth on the books $170,000 right here. So on January 21st, Mr. Parker's account is written off because it can't be collected. So instead of having to take it out and put it into bad debts, where did it go? I lost it, folks. How about here? There it is. So instead of going directly, and putting it into our bad debts account, we've already got it there. It's already been taken care of. So now what we're going to do is start emptying out the allowance account. So we've taken $6,000 out of it and removed his account from accounts receivable. Now what does that do? At the first of the year, we made that adjusting entry. We fill this account up and we empty it out throughout the year from that group of accounts receivable that we had set up. And at the beginning of the next year, we'll fill it up again. So this is saying the company writes off $26,750 worth of uncollectible accounts during the year, including the $6,000 account. So after posting all those entries, they still have a balance of $3,250 in the account at the end of the year. We could very well have a debit account over here, in which case we'll have to adjust it, but I'll show you how to do that later on. Right now we're just kind of looking at how this works. So if we come down here, again, they've written off on April 2nd, and it was later collected, okay? So we wrote it off, and we took it out of accounts, the allowance account. She came back in and paid for it. Well, we're not doing anything other than doing a cash, because her account seriously has not been jeopardized here. So we do a cash, receipt of the cash, we've reinstated it here, where we put it back in and taken it out of the allowance account. And then we have taken in the cash and taken it out of the accounts receivable. So you have to reinstate her account, and then you have to show the receipt of cash. And finally, there are two ways of estimating that, because I know everybody's saying, well, how do you know how much to take out? A lot of it is historic, what has historically been the amount of money that's going to be uncollectible. The first way is called the percent of sales method, which means I take a certain percent of sales, I'll say 3%. And that's because 3% has been the average of uncollectibles for 5 years. The other way is we analyze each group within the accounts. Say we know of the new accounts that we've just come in, 1% is probably going to be uncollectible. We know of the ones that are there 30 to 60 days, 2% will probably be uncollectible. And it's called aging the accounts. And we'll have a video that shows how that works. For right now, I want you to look at this and remember establishing the account, which was down here, where we decided it was $30,000, and we established this account right here, and then how we took out each account. When this one definitely became uncollectible, we knew it. And how do we know that it's going to be uncollectible? Probably they filed bankruptcy and we've been notified by their lawyer, or they've gone out of business and we can't get a hold of them. Many ways. A lot of places will say, well, after 6-7 years, I'm not going to collect it, so they just get it off the books. So that's step one between the direct versus the allowance method. I think I don't know too many people who use the direct method unless they're really, really small mom and pop, and most people will use this allowance method. So on to how they establish that balance in the allowance account.